Hello everybody, it's Brent Agin. This is Q&A with Dr. A, and today we have a subject that we're going to discuss that's extremely important, and you're going to see there's a lot of tie-ins to a lot of the discussions that we have. Today we're talking about mitochondria. As you can see back here behind me, let's see, well, we can't really see that well. Oh, there we go. Those IVs right there, alpha lipoic acid and glutathione. So you can see I'm doing my job, and we'll talk a little bit more about these two nutrients that I'm getting infused right now. So I figured it was a good time for me. I like getting IVs, and I figured this would be a good time to get an infusion while I talk about mitochondria. So kind of the topics we want to hit with mitochondria are: what are they? What do they do? What happens when they aren't doing their job, or we have mitochondrial dysfunction, and what happens with that? And then of course, what can we do to support a mitochondria, and how can we actually treat mitochondrial dysfunction? And so you probably remember, if you listen to any of these, that I always say that I believe that all chronic disease is somewhat connected back to mitochondrial dysfunction. And so that's kind of the reason why we're gonna have this discussion, is I think it's gonna make a lot of sense to you why disease happens and exactly what is going on. I'm going to try to stay in layman's terms, and so I try not to get too technical, but just bear with me if I do get a little technical. So anyway, mitochondria. So we have trillions of cells in our body, right? So all of these cells have these organelles in them called mitochondria. And mitochondria are considered kind of the powerhouses of the cells. So hopefully you've all heard this term. And so, you know, obviously cells that have a more intricate job in our bodies are going to have more mitochondria. So you look at like muscle cells have greater than 2,000 mitochondria in them. If you look at like your eye, your iris, your heart, your brain, these cells are going to have a higher amount of these organelles just because the energy demands are so much higher. The liver, another one. And so you can see that all throughout our whole body we have these, all of our cells have these organelles called mitochondria to create energy. The only cell in our body that doesn't have mitochondria is the red blood cell. And so we have all these cells, they all have these organelles to make energy. And so, exactly what do the mitochondria do? How do they produce this energy? What is going on in these organelles that make them so important? And so we obviously need energy to survive. And so each of these organelles, what it does is it takes the food we eat in the form, especially macronutrients in the form of glucose, and then the air we breathe, or oxygen, and they combine glucose and oxygen to form what is called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And that's done through this process called oxidative phosphorylation, which doesn't really mean anything to you, but it's just the process of taking the food we eat, oxygen from the air, and through a process turn it into these energy molecules called ATP. So now ATP, what happens is the chemical bonds in ATP then go through a process of breaking down these chemical bonds, which release energy. Our body utilizes this energy. Whatever ATP we don't use goes back into circulation, and then we use it again for another day. And so that's great. It's kind of very similar to when we talk about carbohydrate storage. We store our carbohydrates in the form of glycogen in our skeletal muscles and in our liver. We use up those glycogen stores for energy, and then we have to replenish them. So it's kind of, it's just our body is innately prepared to make enough energy to have a balanced life, which is called homeostasis. So now so that's all fine and dandy. So if in a normal circumstances, we have all these mitochondria in all the proper cells to keep producing energy so that our body still functions, whether it's immune response or breathing or heart beating, muscle, the fight or flight response, all of those different things need energy. So our whole body is powered by these little organelles, and then, and it does great. And everything is perfect until something's not perfect. And so what's interesting is that our mitochondria, and you guys might have heard of the term called free radicals. So free radicals are always kind of considered as bad things, and that things that we need to fight, because they're these free radicals that are floating around in our body that can cause damage. But what's really interesting is that the mitochondria, during this process of making ATP, as a byproduct, make two substances called reactive oxygen species, or ROS is one of them, and another one is reactive nitrogen species, which is RNS. And these free radicals are a byproduct of this process of making energy. And so in normal balanced energy production and energy use, the body does great. But in these byproducts or these free radicals that is produced from this process of energy production actually have functions. They actually can, at right levels, they can go out and actually contribute to the immune response and inflammatory response. And again, everything's great. But now just imagine if all of a sudden something starts to mess with our mitochondria, whether that is some sort of a toxin or other various exposures, or if the mitochondria are being pressed and pressed and pressed. So they're just having to make so much ATP and all this energy they're making, and then when they're making this energy, they're making more and more free radicals. And then at some point, there is a problem where we can't manage the amount of free radicals. We don't have enough energy to keep making the ATP that we have to recycle. We only probably have about 300 grams of ATP that we store in our body, and that could be drained out pretty quickly over a few days, almost like we talked about with the glycogen and intense exercise. So then kind of think about that. So now we're kind of going into this damage repair thing, and that's why I always say mitochondrial dysfunction is caused by, or is the cause of all disease. So you can kind of see where I'm leading to this. So you have this energy production, and now you have these different exposures, whether internal or external, that can create problems for our energy production cells. So just imagine something going and hitting an energy like a nuclear power plant, and it shuts down half the plant. Well, guess what? Half of the supplied area of energy is going to be shut down as well. And so when we look at damage and repair, that's the easiest way for us to kind of look at what is going on, and when you can kind of look at yourself and say, where am I and why is my body doing certain things? And so when you look at damage and repair, you have internal or intrinsic causes of damage, and you have external or extrinsic causes of damage. Either one of them can be a problem. So the intrinsic we kind of just talked about, and that's where we create free radicals. And if our body is pushed, we can create these reactive oxygen species that can then start damaging our own mitochondria, or even go into the bloodstream and cause damage to other tissues. And then you can imagine external causes are things like smoking, illicit drugs, alcohol, smoke, sunburning, anything that's external that can cause damage to our bodies. And you can imagine there's a lot of chemicals in our processed foods, and a lot of chemicals that we're exposed to. In a normal situation, we can manage these exposures, manage our energy production, manage our free radicals, and the body balances out. But one example is in our mitochondria, CoQ10, which is coenzyme Q10, is a very powerful antioxidant that is actually processed and stored in the mitochondria as well as other tissues. But even when CoQ10 levels decline with age, our mitochondrial function declines with age. Now just imagine if you get yourself in a position where you start to not exercise, you start to get sick, you get hit with a bad infection, and your energy production needs go up. And so now you're limited on that 200 to 300 grams of energy. And if you start burning through that, and if you start not having as optimal mitochondria, you're going to start to get into the negative, and then that's where problems start. And that's the simple thing of just thinking damage and repair. When our body is able to repair itself, and that means providing enough energy for the body to function and keep itself in homeostasis, everything is great. And that's both mental and physical wellness. I mean, that is, you need mitochondria. They're in the nerve cells. They're part of the whole production of our neurotransmitters for mental wellness, as well as obviously our physical wellness. So everything can start to change when the damage is outdoing the repair. So that's the simplest thing to think about. So you have limited energy stores, and if your energy production starts going down because of increased energy needs, you're going to go into a deficit, which at that point your body is going to start causing, having to try to produce more ATP, making more free radicals, don't have enough antioxidants such as CoQ10 or other even antioxidants we can get from our food, our fruits and vegetables, and even internally things like resveratrol, vitamin E, vitamin C, B vitamins. These are things that counteract or absorb and neutralize free radicals. And so, but you can see now that if you're into once you have this insult or this higher demand of energy needs, as soon as those energy needs are reduced, then your body can catch up. But now just imagine if you just keep having stressors, you keep having things happening to where you just never catch up. Well, then what happens is the free radicals are now damaging your mitochondria. The free radicals are now going out throughout your blood, causing damage to other tissues, causing more energy needs, and then boom. Just like when we talked about stress at the last Q&A, you're going to start seeing that you're getting yourself into a negative scenario where you cannot manage the damage with your repair mechanism. So guess what happens? More and more damage happens. That's when symptoms occur, and that is going to be when you start seeing disease and chronic inflammation and other chronic disease. And so now you can see, so you can kind of see the damage and repair thing. So what are some signs that maybe your mitochondria aren't doing what it's supposed to do? Well, you can imagine it's going to be things like decreased energy, decreased mood or mood variability, decreased sleep, muscle wasting, obviously chronic fatigue. You start just seeing signs that you just don't feel well, getting sick often, things like that. You just seem to be getting more colds. Just can't seem to get out of this issue with various symptoms that are not normal for you, but you see that they're starting to happen. And the problem is that a lot of times this dysfunction happens slowly and over time, and of course as we age. And some people just sit there and say, "Oh, I'm getting old. This is just typical aging," which is true. But there are so many things you can do to counteract what is happening in the body, to try to bring that repair mechanism up, try to keep your mitochondria healthy so that you win this battle. And so if you think about that, if you think about all the different things that can create damage, both internal and external, what can we do to make our mitochondria stronger, more productive, and also what else can we do to balance out our immune response that has to be implemented when we're in that stressful situation where we can't keep up with the demands on the energy? Well, as these free radicals are happening, you want to reduce the chances of getting infections. You want to reduce the chances, all of your energy demands you want to reduce. So the things that are going to help with those things are going to be, obviously sleep, diet, exercise. And so you can see this is very lifestyle driven, and this is how this all kind of works together, is that your mitochondria, your energy production, is going to be at the highest when you have the least amount of insults or issues happening to your body. So in keeping inflammation down, keeping your immune response at the highest point. So everything that you can do to keep your body in that homeostasis is going to reduce your chances of getting into this energy deficit. And so just as I said, sleep, diet, and exercise. Obviously you need deep stages of sleep for your immune response, for your body to get rid of toxins in the brain and the body, and to also start replenishing some of these mitochondrial ATP stores. You burn through them while you're sleeping, you can catch up. So if you're starting to be in a deficit and you're not sleeping, you're not getting that recovery, you're not removing these toxins, you're not being able to build up your ATP stores so that hopefully the next day you can start putting up a fight and trying to get out of this cycle. So obviously we know sleep. So exercise, same thing. We talk about exercise. I always talk about high intensity interval training because that is a science supported way of actually producing more production of NAD, which we'll talk about. We've talked a lot about NAD, which is nicotinic adenine dinucleotide, which is something that is stimulated through deep stages of sleep, and through exercise. And NAD is exactly what donates electrons. It's a derivative of vitamin B3. It donates electrons to this whole process of ATP production. So if your NAD levels are down and your mitochondrial production of ATP are down, and you're getting insulted by all these different stresses and energy demands, you can see that you just are not going to be able to get out of this hole. So exercise helps with the NAD, and then another thing is diet. So we just talked about how you need to take the food that we eat, the oxygen from the air, to produce the ATP through that process. So you want to eat nutrient-dense food so that your body is getting all the nutrients it needs to most efficiently produce energy. And so you can imagine if you're drinking alcohol, which empty calorie type things, processed foods that have various additives that can be considered exposures, all of these things start whacking away at your ATP or your energy production, and actually can produce those free radicals that will actually damage your powerhouses. And so intermittent fasting actually has a way of helping produce energy in the form of NAD, and directly kind of supports this whole process of ATP production. And so Remember, with intermittent fasting, it's because we're not choosing glucose all the time. We actually have an alternative fuel choice. And so now the brain can function on both ketones and glucose, so we can manage with a higher efficiency of energy production when we're burning our fatty acids. And so it's kind of a special little opportunity that you can have, using that as an eating strategy, because it directly increases our NAD levels and directly supports our mitochondria. So other things that you can do on the supplement and supplement side is plenty. So we always talk about NAD, and NAD injections are great because it is a direct electron donor to the mitochondrial production of energy. So it is a direct energy molecule. So by giving NAD, you're already going to start supporting that mitochondrial efforts to get back out of the hole you're in. Another one is MOTC. MOTC is a actual mitochondrial derivative peptide, and what MOTC does is it actually helps improve the production, our mitochondrial stability, and so that they get less chances of being damaged by free radicals. And another thing I was going to say about NAD is that what NAD's real response is when we're talking about damage and repair. Remember, I might have said that you might remember me saying that NAD is one of the the immune response is one of the biggest consumers of NAD, which is one of our energy molecules. So when you get into this damage and repair, and damage is winning, you need NAD because NAD repairs our DNA. It obviously fuels our immune response, and also makes these proteins called sirtuins. And what sirtuins do is what their whole role is to help the mitochondria and help the mitochondria keep producing the energy that we need. And so again, that takes energy to produce these sirtuins, which is what NAD does. So NAD is a huge opportunity to get people out of mitochondrial dysfunction. Some other things that are good, epitalin. Epitalin is a natural compound that's very similar to a compound that we make in our body called epitalon. And what it does is it works on our end caps of our DNA called telomerase, our telomeres, and actually as we age, our telomeres start to shorten, and this telomerase is what epitalin works on, and it's been shown through multiple studies that by increasing the lengths of those telomeres, we can actually slow down aging, which that part of the process is also directly correlated with mitochondrial health. Another one is Thymulin. I know we have not been able to have thymosin alpha and thymosin beta, but Thymulin kind of has some attributes of both of those peptides. So Thymulin actually is a stimulator of both B and T cells, or lymphocytes, in our immune response. And why this is important is because, just as I was saying, is that we want to do everything we can to support our immune response so it doesn't have to take up our energy. So Thymulin actually can stimulate our T cells, our helper cells, and our memory cells, and our killer cells to be more active, to fight infections, to give our mitochondria some chance to regenerate energy. And so epitalin's a great one. You only have to do it for 80 days, twice a year. And then another one that goes right along with that is that Thymulin. And so Thymulin's another one that you can do for 10-day bursts, twice a year. So actually, one of the things that I'm going to do is to do a twice a year stack with using Thymulin and epitalon, and do them both in those periods of time. So I know twice a year I can jump on these just to be supportive of my mitochondria. Some other things are obviously B vitamins, which are used up in the stress response. Vitamin C, things that also are supportive, like stem cells. But you can see that anything that you can do with your lifestyle and these supportive therapies that will help give our mitochondria a chance to recover is going to be able to get you out of the hole. Now, if you're someone that's sitting here and you're on a bunch of medications, you have some chronic diseases, just realize that what got you there, it was probably a duration of slow progressive destruction or insults to the mitochondria that just start causing these slow energy deficits that over time starts to create, almost a vicious cycle, because as you stop losing your energy, you're going to start getting neurotransmitter disruption. So your mood's going to change. You're going to start losing your energy. So you're going to stop going to the gym. You might not make the best food choices because now you're getting depressed. You're gaining weight. And then fat tissue can actually work as an endocrine gland, which can also cause inflammation. And so now your insulin's not working well. You're riding on your fight or flight, which is causing more inflammation and more insulin resistance, and this is all just keep causing more and more demands on your mitochondria. And so to get out of chronic illness, you have to focus on your lifestyle and support that lifestyle with these products that can directly increase your chances of letting your mitochondria start catching up. So at the beginning, you're just giving extra energy just so you can start beating some of these diseases, start getting some fat loss off, so you can get some energy, so you can get to the gym. Start focusing on your sleep. So if you can just really focus on your lifestyle and realize it is going to take a little bit of time for you to get these mitochondria to be working for you again, you're not going to rush into to thinking that there's a magic pill and this is just going to stop. So hopefully that kind of is making sense. It's just simple. It's damage and repair. Our mitochondria are the things that make all of the energy for us. When those mitochondria are overworked, they're going to start causing problems because they can't catch up with all of the things necessary for our body to maintain that homeostasis. So damage starts winning, and then we're just chasing our tail trying to get out of it. So you can see how important our mitochondria are. You can see how important it is to maintain our mitochondrial function. We can do that through aging, by keeping a good lifestyle. And just remember, there are products that can help people get out of disease. There's always an opportunity to beat chronic illness. And so do not think, it does not matter how ill, how many chronic illnesses you have, how bad you're struggling with energy. This should make sense to you of what could be the problem. And it does. In some people that have been kind of struggling with energy from early days, from youth or teenage years, you could have a genetic predisposition to mitochondrial dysfunction. You could have a predisposition from NAD dysfunction, where you can't make enough NAD to power to donate those electrons to your mitochondria. So there are things that you can do if you're really struggling. Talk to your doctor about getting a genetic test, getting genetic testing done. And then also, obviously, utilize us at TeleWellnessMD. We have a lot of therapies that focus on energy, anti-aging, and also just direct energy molecules to help, so that we can allow our bodies to start kind of getting back into balance. So it takes a little bit of time. It's not a sprint. It's definitely a marathon for a lot of people. But the end result is energy, which is going to make you happy. It's going to make you healthy. It's going to power your body. And once you get into that positive cycle, it's so much easier to maintain. So it doesn't matter, again, it doesn't matter how you view your situation from an overall health. If you want to be healthier, it's going to start with your mitochondria. So just, jump in and start doing the things you need to do, because you can win the battle of damage and repair. So hopefully that was a good discussion, because it is a really important one, and it ties into lifestyle, and everything that we do at TeleWellnessMD is going to be lifestyle related, because there is no better medicine than sleep, diet, and exercise. And again, remember, put all your efforts in at the beginning, because as you get that lifestyle in place, it gets cheaper and cheaper, because sleep, diet, and exercise are free. So all right, guys, that is it on mitochondria. I will see you in 2 weeks. I do not know what the topic's going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be a good one. Thank you.